This is developing as we come on the air tonight. At any moment, a federal judge in Boston could order the Trump administration to tap into billions of dollars in a savings account to help cover November SNAP benefits. Oregon and Washington joined several other states and sued the federal government. We're on your side, working to determine what the judge's decision could mean for people right here in the Pacific Northwest.
Two federal judges have ruled the government must continue to fund SNAP. The federal food assistance program was set to be frozen tomorrow as the government shutdown stretches into November. But more than 24 Democratic-led states sued the Trump administration over suspending the benefits. CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson joins us now to discuss. So, Jessica, these judges say the federal government needs to use contingency funds to keep SNAP up and running. Can you break that down for us?
Absolutely. There was a question as to whether or not the federal government was mandated based on the terms of the statute to continue to provide these SNAP benefits, even though we are in a government shutdown and no new budget has been passed. We now have two different district court judges looking at the statutes and saying that they believe the fact that there are contingency funds there and looking at, again, the language of the statute indicates that the federal government must provide at least partial funding for these programs. We should remind everybody that these are temporary restraining orders, meaning this is not a final ruling on the merit. Both judges are looking at who's likely to succeed, where there will be an irreparable risk of harm if you do or don't grant this emergency relief. And what we're seeing is, in one case, the judge is saying, federal government, I think you need to pay, let me know by Monday. In another case, a judge is saying something very similar, which is you need to pay, essentially tell me by Monday that you did. But both of them globally reaching the same conclusion.
The state is suing the feds, arguing the USDA is violating federal law by suspending payments. The White House says the Department of Agriculture does not have the power to use its contingency fund in this case. They say it needs to be used for emergencies like natural disasters. The judge in Boston said this is an emergency. House Speaker Mike Johnson agrees with President Trump. Democrats are not buying the argument.
The simplest way to end the pain and the simplest way to make this stop is for the Democrats to do the obvious and right thing and vote for the nonpartisan funding measure so that we can turn everything back on.
And that's what really surprises me, is the level of cruelty that is marking Republican leadership right now, that they would put children and families at risk during this fight.
How about you take away all the pay for all of these politicians who are playing games on the left and the right and in the middle, wherever they may be. Every single Democrat, Republican, Independent, any politician in Washington that's still cutting a check, let's cease that. You don't get no money. All the money y'all was gonna get, we gonna give to the starving people out here. That's how it should be.
These trial court rulings indicate that the 1 in 8 Americans who rely on these benefits should be able to get at least partial benefits. Having said that, we know these rulings will be appealed. So what we need to look at in the next hours is whether these temporary restraining orders, or in one case, almost granting the temporary restraining order, whether or not they're paused while the cases are appealed. That could mean people will not get benefits, at least for a temporary period of time.
I've been trying to get an exact timeline all day to find out how soon benefits could be restored. Now, the Oregon Department of Human Services told me that if full federal funding is restored, the agency will begin issuing SNAP benefits as soon as possible. However, if only partial federal funding is restored, ODHS will need detailed guidance from the USDA before issuing any benefits. ODHS also says since many states use the same EBT vendor for electronic food dollars, there will be a national queue for processing, and Oregon's files may need to be sent to groups to avoid delays. People who normally receive SNAP benefits later in the month may get their benefits sooner than others as files are processed.
No food bank can replace SNAP, they said. For every meal we provide, SNAP provides 9. The decision to withhold these benefits will deepen hunger in every corner of our state.
We are going to go forward no matter what. I mean, I don't know if it's just stubbornness or blind courage, or, I mean, we did this in the pandemic. We served dinner in our cafe on Monday night, and Tuesday morning we served breakfast to go because everything was shut down. We barely had a plan, but we knew people were going to need to eat.
Blanchet House says it's already served 30,000 more meals this year over last year and 60,000 more meals than just 2 years ago.
There is no doubt and is beyond argument that irreparable harm will begin to occur if it hasn't already occurred in the terror it caused some people about the availability of funding for their food for their family. Good for you, Judge. His ruling came minutes after another federal judge in Boston, who was overseeing a separate but similar lawsuit, said that the group of states that are plaintiffs in the case is likely to prove that the suspension of SNAP was unlawful. That judge, Indria Talwani, gave the administration until Monday to tell her if it will authorize at least reduced SNAP benefits in November. President Trump said in a statement on social media later Friday, he says, "Our government lawyers do not think we have the legal authority to pay SNAP with certain monies we have available, and now two courts have issued conflicting opinions on what we can and cannot do." I guess so. One judge says fund it, use the emergency funds, and the other judge, the female judge, says give me till Monday. You let me know by Monday if you can at least give a portion of these food stamps out. He says, "I do not want Americans to go hungry just because the radical Democrats refuse to do the right thing and reopen the government. Therefore, I have instructed our lawyers to ask the court to clarify how we can legally fund SNAP as soon as possible." All right, here's the thing. This is very good news because now something's happening. Because if you take away people's food stamps, it hurts. It hurts tremendously. A lot of families are going to hurt. And a lot of people will be upset. Riots in the streets, looting, chaos, just people being upset, walking around pissed off. Imagine just walking down the street, people mad bugging you, their day's bad. It's just bad negative energy across. So what's here is that the government is shut down, which means there's no funds available. Everything stopped. The printing presses are closed. Banks are closed. Ain't nothing. No federal nothing's happening. So unless you got an emergency pile of cash where you can fund this, ain't nothing going to happen. But Trump said that there are emergency funds. He admitted that there is emergency reserve money. We just don't know how much of it, and we don't know if they will honor it. But it looks like they're going to honor it, guys. It looks like he might do it. It looks like people might do it. If we are given the appropriate legal direction by the court, it will be my honor to provide the funding, just like I did with the military and law enforcement pay. All right, so he says for sure they got the money. So you're talking about if the judge, Trump is saying if the judge says it's okay, if we can get clarity, I'm sending my lawyers for some clarity, then we want to do it. Well, if that's the case, you already had a judge, the one from Rhode Island, who said, do it. Blocked. Pay the stuff. So if that's the case, just pay it. Just because one judge comes and says something a little bit different doesn't mean, oh, well, I don't know. We got to find out. We have to find clarity of what this means. Because I would do it. I don't want the people to be hungry. Be poor people. I don't want them to be hungry. So I would do it for you, just American people. I just got to understand. We have to make sure that we understand how we're doing this, and I would definitely do it. Well, then do it. Let's do it. Lawyers for the plaintiffs in the case before McConnell argued that a court hearing Friday that the cutoff of SNAP benefits was an arbitrary and capricious act that had caused a crisis for the Americans who need food stamps to eat. A Justice Department lawyer argued that SNAP did not exist anymore because there was no congressionally appropriated funds for it as a result of the shutdown, which is probably not true because the President of the United States says, I gave military pay. I got access to that money. I paid them, and I'll do it for them if you say it's cool. Federal judges, is it cool? I could do it. So I'm not, what the Justice Department is saying, this Justice Department lawyer, a lawyer for the Justice Department said this, but what Trump says is definitely going to wipe away what he's saying. The lawyer Tyler Becker also argued that the administration's discretion whether to use up to $6 billion in contingency funds already set aside by Congress to continue issuing SNAP benefits. Let me tell you something right now. How about you take away all the pay for all of these politicians who are playing games on the left and the right and in the middle, wherever they may be? every single Democrat, Republican, Independent, any politician in Washington that's still cutting a check, let's cease that. You don't get no money. All the money y'all was gonna get, we gonna give to the starving people out here. That's how it should be. Because I find it weird how the government is shut down, yet at the same time, these politicians getting paid. That doesn't sit right with me. I don't think that that's right, and I don't think it's fair. There is no SNAP program, and as a result, the government cannot just provide SNAP benefits. Who are you? A shutdown is not an emergency, said Becker, adding that if there was an emergency, it would have been created by Congress in failing to appropriate money. Okay, so here's that politics stuff that I hate. I hate when people make things political when this is humanitarian. You have a number, 42 million Americans, women, children, mothers, elderly, disabled. All of these people who are going to go hungry. And you're talking about that they should have voted. We are past that. The federal judge put a decree and said, nah, you got to pay it. The president of the United States says, yes, I'll pay it. So now that we're there, the next step is pay it. None of this political, none of this. Talking about a shutdown is not an emergency. Well, it is an emergency, you douchebag. That is such a douchebag thing to say. This lawyer for who is this person? Becker, a lawyer for the Justice Department. My goodness, what a freaking inhumane person. It is an emergency. The government shutdown itself is not the emergency, but the effects of the government shutdown is the emergency. Meaning 42 million people going without food during Thanksgiving month. That's not an emergency? Absolutely, it's an emergency. 42 million people. Do that with Medicare. See what happens. Do that with freaking supplemental security insurance and SSDI and Social Security and all that. Do that with those people and see if that's going to go okay for you. This type of stuff is, I don't like it. This is the type of stuff I don't like. But what I do like is the fact that now, since a federal judge came out, and by the way, here's my thing. Here's what I don't like. Why is this federal judge coming out at the 23rd hour and putting a ruling out? Why didn't you do this 2 weeks ago when the USDA said we're getting close to the threshold where even if the government does reopen, we cannot issue those benefits because it's too close to November? Even if they have to put them through, what are the odds that people get their stuff on the 1st or the 2nd or the 3rd or the 4th or the 10th or the 15th or Thanksgiving? Who knows? So what's up with this judge waiting and sitting by? You knew that this was I'm gonna scroll back to what you said, man, because you know what you said is nice to hear. He says, there is no doubt and it is beyond argument that irreparable harm will begin to occur if it hasn't already. You said it yourself. If it hasn't already occurred in the terror that it caused for some people about the availability of funding for food for their family. You just said it already. If there hasn't already, you're a part of that problem, Judge, Your Honor. What you wait so long for? You could have did this 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I know that you wanted to wait, huh? Maybe the government will open up. But after 10 days of the government shutdown, shouldn't you have been getting closer to just making this ruling? When there was 10 days left, 10 days ago, 7 days ago, a week ago, when the USDA said it's getting to the point where even if the government opens, we might not be able to, we can't get the families the food that they need. We can't get them SNAP. We can't do it. You missed the deadline. So why did you let that deadline pass, which was over a week ago, before you did this ruling? You know, good deeds are good deeds. And this is a good deed, in my opinion, because you're making something happen to the point where the president is like, okay, for sure, let's make it happen then. We could do something. But too little, too late almost. Because when are these people going to get their stuff? It's too late. The USDA said, too late, bro. They ain't going to get nothing. And all of this has to do with politics. This is why I can't stand politics. We need to rely on common sense, humanity, leave the greed and the corporate capitalism crap to the side. Deal with that later on its own. Let that to the side. That's different from this. This is a humanitarian issue. This ain't politics. Humanitarian people are hungry. Feed them. This is the government. Now, I understand some of you guys may feel, why the government got to do all this for you? Get a job, get a job. And, you know, that's a very typical response to say. And in some instances, that is true. But in many instances, it is not true. It's more nuanced to that. It's more involved. There's a lot of people that just can't work. There's a lot of people that do work, don't make enough. There's a lot of people that work full time. Still is not enough to get by. How many of you guys right now in the chat believe that you can get by on a full-time 40-hour a week minimum wage job?